Every night my son calls me and asks the same strange question. Dad, are you alone? Yesterday, I finally lied, and that lie saved my life. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I'm Richard Halden, Rick to everyone who knows me. 56 years old, former long-haul trucker, current desk jockey at Midwest Logistics. 25 years I spent behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler, crossing state lines while most people slept. The last 10 years I've been doing paperwork, managing routes, keeping the company's operations running smooth. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and my back doesn't scream at me anymore. My life is simple. I wake up at 6, make coffee strong enough to strip paint, kiss my wife Helen goodbye, and drive 15 minutes to the office in my old Ford pickup. I work until 5, sometimes 6, if there's a problem with a shipment or a driver calls in with trouble. Come home, eat whatever Helen's made, she's a better cook than I deserve, and we watch whatever she wants to watch. I learned a long time ago that a happy wife makes for a peaceful house. On weekends, I fix things around the house or sit in the garage pretending to organize tools while drinking beer and listening to old country music. It's a good life, a quiet life, the kind of life you earn after decades of hard work and keeping your head down. My son Zack is 30. He works in corporate logistics too, though at a different company. Or so he told me. He's always been ambitious, always wanted more than what we had growing up. Can't blame him for that, really. I wanted him to have it easier than I did. Helen and I made sure he went to college, got his degree in business management, had opportunities I never had. I was proud when he graduated, proud when he got his first real job, proud when he married Vanessa 3 years ago. She's not my favorite person, too focused on status and appearances for my taste. But Zack seemed happy, and that was enough for me. But about 6 months ago, something changed. Something subtle at first, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. It started with phone calls. Zack had always been decent about staying in touch, calling maybe once a week, stopping by for dinner every couple of weeks with Vanessa in tow. Then suddenly, he was calling every night. Same time, around 8:30, like clockwork, and every single call started the same way. Hey Dad, how's it going? You alone? The first few times I didn't think anything of it. Maybe he wanted to talk about something private, guy stuff he didn't want Helen to overhear. Maybe he was having problems with Vanessa and needed advice. But it kept happening. Every single night for weeks. Dad, you alone? I'd say yes or no, depending on where Helen was. If I said no, he'd make small talk for a few minutes. How's work? How's the weather? Did you see that game? And then hang up. If I said yes, he'd launch into questions about my work, my finances, my retirement plans. He wanted to know about the house, about my pension, about the insurance policies Helen and I had set up years ago. He said he was just trying to help me plan for the future, make sure I was set up right for when I eventually retired. It felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. This was my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd helped become. Why would I be suspicious of him trying to help? Then came the documents. 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday evening, Zack showed up at the house unannounced. Vanessa wasn't with him, which was unusual. He had a leather folder under his arm, the expensive kind with gold clasps. He looked nervous, kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Got something important to show you, Dad," he said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with homework 20 years ago. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers, maybe 30 pages thick. "I've been talking to a financial advisor," he said, spreading the papers across the table. "Really sharp guy, works with high net worth individuals. Anyway, I told him about your situation, and he put together this retirement portfolio. It's comprehensive estate planning, asset protection, the whole thing. All you need to do is sign a few forms, transfer some assets into a trust, make sure everything's protected in case something happens to you. I picked up the first page. Dense legal language, the kind that makes your eyes glaze over after the first paragraph. It's just smart planning, Dad, Zack continued, his voice taking on that smooth salesman tone. You've worked hard your whole life. This makes sure Mom's taken care of, makes sure nobody can touch what you've built. And it has tax advantages, too. You could save thousands. Helen stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her unease radiating across the room. She's always had good instincts about people. I flipped through the pages. Trust agreements, transfer documents, power of attorney forms, asset consolidation agreements. Terms I didn't fully understand. Clauses that seemed to loop back on themselves. Let me look this over, I said. I don't sign anything without reading it first. Learned that lesson a long time ago. Zack's smile tightened, just a fraction. If I hadn't been watching closely, I would have missed it. Of course, Dad. Take your time. But don't wait too long. The advisor said these rates and terms are only good for another couple weeks. After that, we'd have to restructure everything and it gets more expensive. I'll read it this week. Great. Great. He stood up, gathered the papers back into the folder, but left it on the table. I'll call you in a few days, see if you have any questions. After he left, Helen sat down across from me. She didn't touch the folder, just stared at it like it might bite her. Something's wrong, she said quietly. He's just trying to help. No. She shook her head, and I saw worry in her eyes. Real worry. He's trying to rush you, and he keeps asking if you're alone. Why does that matter, Rick? Why does it matter if I'm in the room when he calls? I didn't have an answer. Not one that made sense. That night, after Helen went to bed, I took the papers to my study and actually read them, every single word. It took me 3 hours and 2 pots of coffee, but I worked through every clause, every subsection, every piece of fine print. I've never been to law school, but 25 years of reading shipping contracts and DOT regulations taught me how to parse legal language, and what I discovered sent a chill through me. These weren't retirement documents. They were transfer documents. If I signed them, I'd be moving ownership of my house, the house Helen and I had lived in for 28 years, into a trust where Zack was listed as the sole trustee. My bank accounts would be consolidated into a joint account with him as the primary holder. My pension would be redirected to an annuity he controlled, with him as the beneficiary. Even my truck's title would transfer to his name for estate management purposes. On paper, it looked like standard estate planning. In reality, it was a legal framework designed to strip me of everything I owned while I was still breathing. The worst part? It was all technically legal. If I signed these papers voluntarily, there would be no fraud, no theft, no crime. Just a father transferring his assets to his son. Happens every day. I sat in my study until 3 in the morning, staring at those papers, trying to understand. This was my son. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike on the street outside this house. The kid I'd driven to baseball practice every Saturday for 6 years, sitting in the bleachers watching him play even when I was exhausted from a week on the road. The young man I'd hugged at his college graduation, so proud I could barely speak. And he was trying to erase me, not in a hurry, not by force, but methodically, carefully, legally. He wanted to take everything I'd built over 56 years and claim it as his own while I was still alive to watch. The next morning, I went to work, like nothing had happened. I've always been good at keeping my face neutral, at not showing what I'm thinking. 25 years of dealing with dispatch supervisors who didn't know a transmission from a carburetor, of handling DOT inspectors looking for any excuse to write citations, of negotiating with shippers who tried to add extra weight after you'd already agreed on a price. All of that taught me how to show nothing when I needed to show nothing. But inside I was spinning. My mind kept cycling through the same questions. Why? Why would Zack do this? What had I done wrong as a father? Had I been too strict? Not strict enough? Had I pushed him too hard to succeed? Or not hard enough? And then the anger would hit. Not hot anger. Not the kind that makes you yell or throw things. Cold anger. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone and doesn't go away. I needed to know more. I needed to understand the full picture before I did anything. So I started looking. I have access to a lot of records at Midwest Logistics. Personnel files, contract histories, shipping manifests, client databases. I've been there 10 years, and I'm trusted with sensitive information. I pulled up Zack's old employee file from 5 years ago when he'd worked here briefly, before moving to what he said was a better opportunity. Standard stuff, nothing unusual. Good performance reviews, no disciplinary issues, left on good terms. Then I searched for any recent interactions between our company and his current employer. He'd told me he worked for a company called Summit Transport Solutions, doing corporate logistics and supply chain management. Made good money, or so he claimed. Nothing came up. No contracts, no communications, no shared clients. That seemed odd. The logistics industry isn't that big, especially in our region. Companies interact with each other all the time, even competitors. I expanded my search, checked the industry database that tracks every registered carrier and logistics company in the country. No Summit Transport Solutions, no DOT registration, no FMCSA license, no safety rating, no insurance filing. According to every official record, the company Zack claimed to work for didn't exist. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, feeling that cold anger get colder. I called Ray Donner. Ray is 60 years old and has been in trucking longer than I have. He drove for 30 years before his knees gave out, and he couldn't climb in and out of a cab anymore. Now he works as a freight broker, connecting shippers with carriers, taking a small percentage off each deal. More importantly, Ray knows everyone in the industry. He's got contacts in every major company from here to California, and he owes me a few favors from back when I helped him study for his broker's license exam. Ray, you ever heard of Summit Transport Solutions? Nope. Should I have? My son says he works there. Corporate logistics. Ray was quiet for a moment. I could hear him typing on his keyboard. You want me to ask around? Yeah, quietly. Don't mention my name if you can help it. Give me a day. I went back to work, processed shipping manifests, handled a driver complaint about a late delivery, reviewed next week's schedule. Normal stuff. But my mind wasn't on it. Ray called back that evening. I was in the garage. Helen was inside watching her shows. Zack had called at 8:30 like always, and I'd told him I was alone, even though Helen was right there in the living room 20 feet away. It was the first time I'd deliberately lied to my son. It felt necessary, like I was protecting something, though I wasn't sure what yet. Rick, there's no company by that name, Ray said without preamble. But I found something interesting. There's an LLC registered 6 months ago called Summit Logistics Holdings. Owners are listed as Zack Halden and Mark Ellison. Ring any bells? Mark Ellison. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Mark was an executive at Midwest Logistics, worked in contracts and procurement on the 3rd floor. Mid-50s, always wore expensive suits that probably cost more than I made in a week, always had a cold smile that never reached his eyes. He was the kind of guy who shook your hand while looking past you for someone more important to talk to. You sure about that? I asked. Looked it up myself in the state business registry, public record. They registered it in Delaware. That's where everyone registers LLCs for the tax benefits. But the business address is here in town. Office Park on Industrial Boulevard. Want me to dig deeper? Not yet. Let me think about this. I hung up and sat in my garage for a long time, staring at nothing. My son had a company I didn't know about, partnered with a man I worked with every day who'd never mentioned it. And he was trying to get me to sign documents that would give him control of everything I owned. This wasn't just theft. This wasn't some impulsive mistake or a moment of weakness. This was planned, calculated, organized, and I was the target. The next morning, I walked into Mark Ellison's office like I had a routine question about a shipping manifest. His office was on the third floor, corner space with windows overlooking the loading docks, nicer than mine by a long shot. He looked up from his computer, gave me that cold smile. "Rick, what can I do for you?" "Got a question about the Pembroke contract. They're saying their last delivery was short 3 pallets of industrial cleaning supplies. Their receiving manager is making noise about withholding payment. Check the manifest and the signed delivery receipt. If it's not listed as delivered, it's not our problem. If it is listed, then it's their receiving department's problem." Already did. Bill of lading shows 3 pallets. Receiving signature confirms 3 pallets. Just wanted to run it by you first before I tell them it's their issue. Good man. Always covering the bases. He turned back to his computer, dismissing me. I thanked him and turned to leave, but not before I saw his desk. Saw the papers spread across it, some in folders, some loose. One of them had Summit Logistics Holdings printed at the top in bold letters, with what looked like a contract or agreement underneath. He was working on it right here, in our office, during company time, using our resources, our connections, our client lists. I walked back to my desk, and my hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. That afternoon, Zack called again. Right on schedule, 8:30. "Hey, Dad, you alone?" I looked across the room at Helen, who was reading a book on the couch. She looked up, met my eyes. I nodded at her. "Yeah," I lied. "Helen's at her sister's place." "Oh, good. Have you had a chance to look over those papers I left?" "Still reading through them. It's a lot of legal language, takes time to understand it all." "I know it's complicated, Dad, but trust me, it's for the best. My advisor really knows his stuff. This kind of estate planning is what wealthy people do to protect their assets. You've earned the right to have that same protection." "Why the rush, though? These things usually take months to set up properly." Silence on the other end, just for a second, but I caught it. "No rush, Dad. Just, you know how these things go. Better to have it done and in place than keep putting it off and something happens. You're not getting any younger. Not getting any younger. Like I was one step from the grave and he was doing me a favor." "I'll let you know when I'm ready to sign," I said. Sure, no pressure. But seriously, try to get it done soon. The advisor's schedule fills up fast." After I hung up, Helen came into the room. "He's getting impatient," she said. "I know. What are you going to do?" I looked at my wife. We'd been married 32 years. She knew me better than anyone. She could see I was working something out in my head, putting pieces together. "I'm going to figure out exactly what he's planning," I said. "Every detail, every step. And then I'm going to stop him." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not signing those papers, and I'm not letting him get away with this." Helen sat down next to me on the couch. She took my hand, something she hadn't done in a while. Life gets busy, you forget the small gestures. "Whatever you need," she said. "I'm with you." I started jotting things down in a simple, pocket-sized spiral notebook, the cheap kind you can buy at any pharmacy for $1. Every time Zack called, I wrote down the date, time, what he asked, what I said, how he responded. Every time I saw Mark Ellison at work, I noted where he went, who he talked to, what files he accessed when he left for the day. Patterns started emerging. Zack called every night at 8:30 except Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, he called at 7. I didn't know why until I checked the office schedule and realized Mark Ellison had a standing meeting with the senior management team every Wednesday at 7:30. They were coordinating their schedules, making sure they didn't overlap, probably so Mark could update Zack on what was happening at the company. Mark was accessing files he shouldn't need for his normal job. I noticed it because our system logs all file access, and I review those logs as part of my job. He was pulling client contracts from 5 years ago, old shipping routes that hadn't been used since we switched carriers, vendor lists that hadn't been updated in years. He was pulling historical data, and I knew why. He was looking for relationships, for connections, for people who remembered me and might ask questions if I suddenly disappeared from the picture. This wasn't just about stealing my assets. This was about erasing me completely, making sure nobody would notice or care when I was gone. I needed to understand their complete endgame. I needed to see the whole plan laid out. So I did something I'm not proud of, but I'd do it again without hesitation. I stayed late at the office one Friday night. Told Helen I had to finish some quarterly reports that were due Monday. Instead, I waited until everyone else left. I watched from my window as the parking lot emptied out, as Mark Ellison walked to his silver BMW and drove away. Then I waited another 30 minutes to make sure nobody came back for something they forgot. The building was quiet, just the hum of the HVAC system and the occasional creak of the structure settling. I walked up to the third floor, my footsteps echoing in the stairwell. Mark Ellison's office door was locked, but I'd been in this building for 10 years. I knew where the facilities manager kept the master keys, in his desk drawer, underneath a pile of maintenance logs. I borrowed them, promising myself I'd return them before I left. His office was neat, everything organized and filed away. His computer was password protected, so I left that alone. No point risking an IT security flag. But his filing cabinet wasn't locked. I went through it systematically, checking every folder, being careful to keep everything in order so he wouldn't notice it had been disturbed. In the back of the bottom drawer, behind folders labeled Q3 Performance Reviews and Vendor Contracts 2024, I found a folder labeled Halden Transition. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Inside were copies of the documents Zack had tried to get me to sign. But there were other papers too. A timeline with dates and milestones, a checklist with items marked complete or in progress, financial projections showing revenue transfers, and a memo, 3 pages long, printed on plain paper. The memo was typed, no signature, but I recognized Mark's writing style from countless company emails. He had a particular way of phrasing things, always formal, always covering himself legally. I read it twice to make sure I understood. Phase 1. Secure signed transfer documents from R. Halden. Timeline. Complete by end of Q4. Status. In progress. Expect completion within 2 to 3 weeks based on current pressure campaign. Phase 2. Once transfer documents are signed and filed, begin client contract redirect. Approach key clients individually. Explain that R. Halden is retiring and his accounts are being transferred to Summit Logistics Holdings for continuity of service. Leverage existing relationships. Timeline, 4 to 6 weeks. Projected revenue transfer, $450,000 annually. Phase 3, vendor relationship transfer. Similar approach. R. Halden has strong relationships with multiple carriers and suppliers. These relationships represent significant value. Timeline, 6 to 8 weeks concurrent with Phase 2. Phase 4. Facilitate R. Halden's departure from Midwest Logistics. His position becomes redundant once client relationships are transferred. Recommend early retirement package, minimal severance. He will not be in a position to argue or negotiate by this point. Timeline, 3 months from Phase 1 completion. Phase 5. Consolidate operations. Summit Logistics. Holdings absorbs all transferred relationships and revenue streams. R. Halden's assets secured through signed documents. Reputation managed through controlled narrative of voluntary retirement. No legal exposure. Clean transition. Projected total value. $2.3 million in assets plus $450,000 annual revenue stream. I stood there in that empty office, reading those words, and something inside me went very quiet and very cold. They'd put a price tag on my life. $2.3 million plus revenue. That's what 35 years of work, of relationships, of reputation was worth to them. And they'd calculated exactly how to take it, step by step, with timelines and milestones like it was any other business project. I took photos of everything with my phone. Every page, every document, every note. Made sure the lighting was good, made sure the text was readable. Then, I put the folder back exactly where I found it, in the same position, behind the same other folders. Locked the filing cabinet, locked the office door, returned the master keys to the facilities manager's desk. In my truck in the parking lot, I sat and let it all sink in. The full scope of the betrayal. My son wasn't just trying to steal from me. He was trying to systematically dismantle my entire life, take my reputation, my work relationships, my identity, everything that made me who I was. And he was going to leave me with nothing, no money, no job, no dignity, while he stepped into the space where I used to be. I drove home. It was after midnight. Helen was still up, waiting in the living room with a single lamp on. "Did you find something?" she asked. "Everything," I said. I showed her the photos on my phone. She read through them slowly, her face getting paler with each image. When she finished, she handed the phone back to me and just sat there for a long moment. "This is Zack?" she whispered. "Our son did this?" "Him and Mark Ellison. They've been planning it for at least 6 months, maybe longer." "Why?" That was the question I couldn't answer. Why wasn't enough money? Why wasn't just ambition? This was something else. Something darker. Helen looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in my wife's eyes. Not just anger, not just hurt. Something colder, something harder. "What are you going to do?" I sat down next to her on the couch. Outside, I could hear the wind picking up, branches scraping against the window. "I'm going to make them answer for what they did," I said. "Not by using force or breaking the law. I won't strike or cause anyone physical harm, but they'll lose everything they tried to take from me, and they'll know it was me." Helen nodded slowly. "Tell me what you need." "I need you to trust me, and I need you to keep pretending everything's normal when Zack calls or comes over. Can you do that?" "Yes." "It's going to take time. Weeks, maybe months. But I'm going to do this right. I'm going to be patient and careful and thorough." She squeezed my hand. "I know you will." The first thing I did was nothing. That probably sounds strange, but it was the most important part of the plan. I kept going to work like normal, kept answering Zack's calls, kept acting like I was still considering signing those documents, asking occasional questions to make it seem like I was taking them seriously. "Hey, Dad, you alone?" "Yeah, Helen's at the grocery store." "Great. So I was thinking about those papers. Have you gotten through them yet?" "Most of it. Still have some questions about the trust structure. Why does it need to be irrevocable?" "That's just standard for asset protection, Dad. It shields everything from creditors and lawsuits. Keeps it safe." "Makes sense. Let me finish reading the last section, and I'll get back to you." Every conversation like that bought me more time. More time to investigate, to plan, to build my case. Because that's what I was doing. Building a case. Not a legal case. I wasn't going to the police or hiring lawyers. But I was gathering evidence, documenting everything, creating a complete picture of what Zack and Mark were doing. I started with Ray Donner. I called him on a Saturday morning when I knew Zack would be occupied. He and Vanessa had a standing brunch thing with her parents every Saturday. "Ray, remember that LLC you found? Summit Logistics Holdings?" "Yeah, what about it?" "I need to know everything about it. Who they're doing business with, what contracts they have, where their money comes from." "That's going to take some digging, Rick." "What's this about?" I told him. "Not everything, but enough." Ray had known me for 20 years. He'd met Zack when he was a kid. He deserved to know why I was asking. When I finished, Ray was quiet for a long moment. "Your own son," he finally said. "That's low, Rick. Real low." "I know. What do you need from me?" "Information. Nothing illegal. Just public records, industry connections, the kind of stuff you'd find out in normal business dealings. I need to know who they're talking to, what promises they're making." "I can do that. Give me a week." I also started watching Mark Ellison more carefully at work. Not obviously. I didn't follow him around or stare at him. But I paid attention. I noticed he took long lunches twice a week, always on Tuesday and Thursday. I noticed he made a lot of personal calls from his office, door closed, voice low. I noticed he printed documents at the end of the day when fewer people were around. One Tuesday, I followed him at lunch, kept my distance, stayed in my truck. He drove to a small office park on the east side of town, the kind with generic buildings and no signage except suite numbers. He went into Building C, Suite 240. I waited until he left 45 minutes later. Then I drove over and checked the directory in the lobby. Suite 240, Summit Logistics Holdings. So they had an actual office. That meant they were further along than I thought. You don't rent office space unless you're planning to be operational soon. I went back to work and pulled up our client database, started making notes about which clients I had the strongest relationships with, which ones I'd personally brought to the company, which ones trusted me specifically and not just Midwest logistics as a whole. There were more than I'd realized. 23 clients where I was the primary point of contact and had been for years. Clients who called me directly when they had problems, who sent Christmas cards to the office addressed to me personally, who'd told me more than once they stuck with Midwest because of me. Those relationships were what Zack and Mark were planning to steal. They thought once I signed those papers, once they had legal control of my assets, they could just waltz in and take over my accounts. Tell the clients I was retiring, smooth transition, nothing to worry about. They were wrong. I started reaching out to those clients, nothing dramatic, just normal business conversations. But I asked questions. Hey Tom, how's that new warehouse working out? Good, Rick. Finally got all the inventory moved over. Should help with efficiency. Glad to hear it. You know, I've been thinking about retirement lately. Probably still a few years out, but I wanted to ask, if I did retire, who would you want as your contact here? Anyone specific, or just whoever the company assigns? Honestly, Rick, I'd probably look around. You're the main reason we've stayed with Midwest. Your replacement would have big shoes to fill. I had that conversation, or versions of it, with 15 clients over 2 weeks. And what I learned was valuable. These relationships were personal. They weren't going to automatically transfer to whoever showed up with my name on a contract. If I left, most of these clients would seriously consider leaving too. That was leverage, real leverage. Ray called me back the following week. Got some information for you, he said. Summit Logistics Holdings has been making moves. They approached at least 6 carriers trying to set up contracts. They're offering rates slightly below market, trying to undercut established relationships. They've also been talking to some of the same vendors you work with, shopping for deals. Any of them bite? A couple expressed interest, but nobody signed anything yet. They're all waiting to see if Summit is legit or just another fly-by-night operation. In this business, reputation matters. You know that. What about financing? How are they paying for all this? That's where it gets interesting. I did some checking with a buddy of mine who works in commercial lending. Summit applied for a business line of credit 2 months ago. Listed projected assets of over $2 million secured by real estate and retirement accounts. My assets. They were going to use my money to finance their company, the company they were stealing my clients for. Rick, there's something else, Ray said. I asked around quietly about Mark Ellison. He's got a reputation. He's done this kind of thing before. What do you mean? About 8 years ago, he was working for a company called Transnational Freight. There was a senior logistics manager there, guy named Paul Hendricks. Ellison convinced Hendricks to bring him in on some side deals, promised they'd split the profits. Instead, Ellison documented everything to make it look like Hendricks was embezzling. Hendricks got fired, Ellison took over his accounts and got promoted. It was ugly. Why didn't Hendricks fight back? He tried, but Ellison had covered himself perfectly. Everything looked legal on paper, and by the time Hendricks figured out what happened, it was too late. Last I heard, Hendricks works retail now. Couldn't get another job in logistics after that. I felt my jaw clench. This was Mark Ellison's pattern. He found people with something valuable, got close to them, and then systematically destroyed them while taking what they had. And he'd chosen me as his next target. Worse, He'd brought my own son into it. Thanks, Ray. This helps. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure history doesn't repeat itself. Helen asked me one evening, about 3 weeks into my investigation, if I was okay. We were sitting in the living room, the TV on, but neither of us really watching it. You're different, she said, quieter. You're thinking all the time. I'm fine. No, you're not. This is eating at you. She was right. I wasn't sleeping well. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning with my mind racing, thinking through scenarios, planning moves and countermoves. I'd lost weight because I kept forgetting to eat lunch. I just need to be careful, I said. If I move too fast, if I make a mistake, they'll know I'm on to them. And then they'll adjust their plan and I'll lose my advantage. Helen moved closer on the couch. You're not alone in this. Remember that. I know. And Rick, you're a good man. A good father, even if Zack can't see that right now. Don't let this change who you are. I wanted to believe her, but I could feel something shifting inside me. That cold anger had settled in deep, and I wasn't sure it was ever going to leave. Zack called that night at 8:30. Hey, Dad. You alone? Yeah. Listen, I need to be straight with you. My advisor is pushing me on this. He says if we don't get these documents signed and filed by the end of the month, we'll have to start over with new paperwork. Different terms, probably higher fees. I'm trying to save you money here. End of the month? That's only 10 days away. I know it seems fast, but trust me, it's better this way. Can you come by my office tomorrow? We can go through any final questions you have, and you can sign everything. I'll have it notarized right there. Tomorrow's not good for me. Dad. His voice got harder. This is important. This is your future we're talking about. Mom's security. Don't you want to protect that? Using Helen as leverage. That was new. Of course I do. Then let's get this done. Thursday, 2 o'clock. I'll text you the address. He hung up before I could respond. Helen had been listening from the kitchen. She came out, her face pale. He's pushing hard now, she said. I know, which means they're on a timeline. Something's forcing them to move faster than they wanted. I spent the next day at work trying to figure out what had changed. I went through Mark Ellison's recent file access logs. In the past week, he'd pulled up client contract renewal dates. A lot of them. Then I understood. 3 of our biggest clients had contracts up for renewal in the next 60 days. If Zack and Mark were going to approach those clients about switching to Summit Logistics Holdings, they needed to do it before the contracts renewed with Midwest. Once those contracts were locked in for another year, the clients wouldn't be able to switch, even if they wanted to. That's why Zack was pushing so hard to get the documents signed. They were running out of time, which gave me an idea. I pulled up the files for those 3 clients: Anderson Manufacturing, Petrotech Distribution, and Keystone Industrial Supply. Combined, they represented about $180,000 in annual revenue for Midwest Logistics. Good clients, paid on time, rarely had problems, and I'd personally managed all 3 accounts for over 6 years. I called each of them that afternoon. Hey Jim, it's Rick Halden at Midwest. Listen, I know your contract is coming up for renewal soon. I wanted to give you a heads up that some changes might be coming on our end in the next few months. Nothing's finalized yet, but I wanted to make sure you heard it from me first. What kind of changes, Rick? Can't say too much yet, but between you and me, there might be some reorganization in how accounts are managed. I'm not sure I'll still be your primary contact. Just wanted to let you know so there are no surprises. Well, that would be a problem. You know we've stayed with Midwest because of you. If you're not managing our account anymore, we'd probably need to reevaluate. I understand completely. Let's talk again before your renewal date. I should know more by then. I had that same conversation with all 3 clients, planted the seed that things were changing, that I might not be there, that they should consider their options. Then I waited. It only took 2 days. Mark Ellison came down to my office on Wednesday morning. He never came to my office. I always went to his. "Rick, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" He closed the door and sat down. His cold smile was nowhere to be seen. "I've been hearing some concerning things. A couple of our clients have been asking questions about organizational changes, about whether you're still going to be managing their accounts. Do you know anything about that?" "Not sure what you mean." "Jim Anderson called yesterday. Said you told him there might be some changes coming, that you might not be his contact anymore." "Why would you say that?" I leaned back in my chair, keeping my face neutral. "I've been thinking about retirement, Mark. You know, taking it easy, spending time with family. I mentioned it to a few clients, wanted to give them advance notice. Seemed like the professional thing to do." Retirement. He said it like it was a foreign word. "You're only 56. "Yeah, but I've been in this business for 35 years. I'm tired, thinking about what's next." "Have you talked to HR about this? Filed any paperwork?" "Not yet, just considering my options." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him trying to figure out if I was being straight with him or if I knew something. "Well," he finally said, "if you do decide to retire, make sure you give us plenty of notice. We'll need time to transition your accounts properly." "Of course." After he left, I allowed myself a small smile. I'd just rattled them. They thought they were in control, thought they had me backed into a corner. But now they knew the clients wouldn't automatically follow them. Now they knew their whole plan depended on me not talking, not warning anyone, not disturbing the relationships they planned to steal. Zack called that night at 7, an hour early. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" No pretense anymore. No, "Are you alone?" Just straight to anger. "What are you talking about?" "You've been talking to your clients about leaving, about retirement. Do you have any idea what that does to your value? To the company's value? Your value. Not my well-being, not my happiness, just value." "I'm allowed to think about retirement, Zack. Not without talking to me first. We have plans, Dad. Plans that involve those client relationships. You can't just throw that away." "What plans? What are you talking about?" Silence. He'd said too much. "Nothing. Forget it. Just don't talk to anyone else about retirement until after you sign those documents. It complicates things." "How does it complicate things, Zack?" "It just does. Listen, are we still on for tomorrow, 2 o'clock? I'll think about it." "Dad," I hung up. Helen had been listening again. She came and sat down next to me. "You're poking the bear," she said. "I know, but they're off balance now. They're making mistakes. And when people make mistakes, they reveal things they didn't mean to reveal." "What's the next step?" "I make them more desperate, and then I start taking apart their whole operation, piece by piece." Thursday morning, I didn't show up at Zack's office at 2 o'clock. I didn't call, didn't text, just didn't go. Instead, I went to the county courthouse and filed some documents of my own. A revocable living trust, with Helen as the sole trustee. Transfer of our house into the trust, effective immediately. Update to my will, specifying that Zack would receive a token inheritance of $1, with the rest going to Helen and then to charity. Power of attorney documents giving Helen full authority over my financial and medical decisions. Everything Zack had wanted me to sign, I signed legitimate versions of with a real estate attorney. Except these documents protected my assets from him instead of giving them to him. The attorney, a woman named Patricia Morrison, who came highly recommended by Ray Donner, reviewed everything carefully. "These are solid," she said. "Your assets are protected. If anyone tries to claim you signed other documents under duress or without understanding them, these versions supersede them because they're properly witnessed and notarized. You're also on record as being of sound mind, which will matter if anyone tries to challenge your competence." What if I'd already signed other documents, before these? Then it gets messy, but these would at least give you grounds to fight. Why? Did you sign something you shouldn't have? No, but someone wanted me to. She nodded slowly. Family member? My son. I'm sorry. I see that more often than you'd think. Adult children getting impatient for their inheritance, trying to take control before their parents are ready. Sometimes they're well-meaning, but misguided. Sometimes... She trailed off. Sometimes they're not well-meaning at all, I finished. Exactly. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Whatever Zack and Mark were planning, they couldn't touch my assets now. The legal foundation of their scheme was gone. Zack called at 6:30 that evening. Earlier and earlier, the schedule completely abandoned now. Where were you today? Something came up. Something came up? We had an appointment, Dad. I waited for an hour. Sorry about that. Must have forgotten. You forgot. He didn't believe me. Dad, what's going on? You're acting strange. Are you feeling okay? Is something wrong? There it was. The concern that wasn't really concern. He was wondering if I'd figured something out, if I knew about his plan. I'm fine. Just busy. We need to reschedule. This is important. Maybe next week. Next week? Dad, I told you we're running out of time. These documents need to be signed now. Why? Why is there such a rush, Zack? I already explained that. Explain it again. Make me understand why you need me to sign papers giving you control of everything I own. Long silence. I'd said it too directly, shown too much of my hand, but I didn't care anymore. I was tired of playing games. That's not what those papers do, Zack finally said, his voice careful now. They protect your assets. I'm trying to help you. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to take everything I've worked for my entire life and claim it as your own. Dad, that's crazy. That's not... I went to an attorney today, I interrupted. A real one. Had her review your documents. Want to know what she said? What attorney? You didn't tell me you were talking to an attorney. She said those papers would strip me of all my assets and give you complete control. She said it's one of the most aggressive asset transfer agreements she's ever seen. She asked me if I was being coerced. That's ridiculous. She doesn't understand the strategy, the tax implications. She understood perfectly. And so do I. I'm not signing anything, Zack. Not now, not ever. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, heavy, angry breaths. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. No, I think I'm finally seeing clearly. Dad, don't call me that. You lost the right to call me that when you decided to rob me. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Helen came over and took the phone from me, set it on the table. It's done now, she said. He knows you know. Yeah. What happens next? Now they'll try something else. They'll adjust their plan, try to work around me. But they're in a corner. Their timeline is shot, their legal angle is gone, and the clients are questioning everything. They're going to make desperate moves. That's when people get dangerous. I know. But I'm not done yet. Not even close. I spent Friday working normally, but I was watching Mark Ellison. He spent most of the day in his office with the door closed, on the phone. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see through his window. He looked stressed, kept running his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd never seen from him before. At 4:30, he came down to my office again. Rick, we need to talk about your retirement plans. What about them? If you're serious about retiring, the company needs to start succession planning. We should sit down with HR and discuss transition timelines, client handovers, knowledge transfer. The sooner we start, the smoother it'll go. I haven't decided for sure yet. But you've been telling clients you're leaving. That's already affecting business. Jim Anderson sent an email this morning asking about alternative logistics providers. Do you understand how that looks? Like he's doing due diligence? Mark's jaw tightened. It looks like our senior logistics coordinator is undermining the company. If you're planning to retire, fine. But you can't sabotage client relationships on your way out. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm being honest with long-term clients who trust me. If they want to look around, that's their choice. Is it because of money? Do you want a better severance package? So that's what he thought. That I was angling for more money. It's not about money, Mark. Then what is it about? I looked at him directly, let him see that I knew. Why don't you ask your business partner? His face went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. Summit Logistics Holdings, Suite 240, Building C, Industrial Boulevard. Ring any bells? The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked out of my office without another word. I'd just declared war, and I was fine with that. The weekend was quiet, too quiet. No calls from Zack, no unexpected visits, just silence. Helen and I spent Saturday working in the yard, planting flowers she'd bought at the garden center, trying to pretend everything was normal. But we both knew something was coming. Sunday morning, Ray Donner called. Rick, you need to know something. Word's gotten around. What word? About you and Zack, about Summit Logistics. I've been asking questions, remember? Well, other people are asking questions now too, and some of those people are your clients. What are they saying? They're saying Zack and Mark Ellison tried to approach them last week, tried to get them to switch their contracts to a new company, offered them lower rates, better terms. But here's the thing. They told the clients you were going to be managing their accounts, that you were leaving Midwest and starting your own company, and Summit was it. So that was their backup plan. If they couldn't get me to sign documents giving them my assets, they'd just pretend I was part of their company. Use my name and reputation to steal the clients anyway. What did the clients say? Most of them said no. Because of what you told them about reorganization and changes, they're suspicious now. They don't know what to believe. But Rick, a couple of them were interested. Petrotech especially. They're having budget issues and lower rates sound good to them. Which clients said no? Anderson Manufacturing, Keystone Industrial, Rogers Supply, and Midwest Freight Consolidators. They all called me asking if I knew what was going on. I told them I'd heard you were thinking about retirement, but nothing was finalized. 4 clients out of 6. That was good. But Petrotech was a big account, maybe $60,000 a year. If they switched to Summit, based on lies about me being involved, it would legitimize Zack and Mark's company. Other clients might follow. Thanks for the heads up, Ray. What are you going to do? I'm going to stop them. Permanently. I spent Sunday afternoon writing a letter, not an email, a physical letter, printed on good paper, signed in ink. I made 23 copies, one for each of my major clients. The letter was simple and direct. Dear valued client, it has come to my attention that representatives from Summit Logistics Holdings may have contacted you regarding a potential change in service providers. I want to clarify, in the strongest possible terms, that I am not affiliated with Summit Logistics Holdings in any way. I have not left Midwest Logistics. I have not started a new company, and I am not encouraging clients to switch providers. If you were told otherwise, you were given false information. I take my professional relationships seriously, and I value the trust you've placed in me over the years. That's why I'm writing to you directly, to ensure you have accurate information and are not misled by unauthorized use of my name. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me directly at the number below. Respectfully, Richard Halden, Senior Logistics Coordinator, Midwest Logistics. I included my personal cell phone number and my work number. Then I drove to a 24-hour copy center, printed them on heavy cardstock, and put them in overnight envelopes with Monday delivery. By Tuesday morning, every major client I had would know that Zack and Mark were lying. Monday morning, I got to work early. Waited in my office for the fallout. It came at 9:15. My phone started ringing. Client after client calling to thank me for the clarification, to express confusion about why someone would use my name falsely, to ask if they should report it to someone. I took every call, stayed calm, explained that it was a misunderstanding that was being resolved. At 10:30, Mark Ellison came down to my office. His face was red, his carefully maintained composure gone. "What did you do?" he demanded. I clarified a misunderstanding. You sent letters to our clients without authorization. That's a violation of company policy. I sent letters to my clients correcting false information that was being spread about me. That's protecting my reputation, which is my right. You've damaged Summit's credibility. I don't care about Summit's credibility. I care about my own reputation and the relationships I've built over 35 years. If Summit was using my name without permission, that's fraud. You can't prove that. Can I? Because I have 4 clients who will testify that they were told I was part of Summit, that I was leaving Midwest to work with you. That's documented now, in writing, with witnesses. Mark stared at me, and I saw real hatred in his eyes. You're finished here, he said quietly. I'll make sure of it. Maybe, but you're finished too, because I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you tried to do, not just to me, but to Paul Hendricks 8 years ago. Remember him? I've been talking to him. He's very interested in comparing notes. The color drained from Mark's face again. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A con artist who destroys people for profit, and a weak man who thought he could hide behind corporate paperwork and legal loopholes. Well, guess what? I've been documenting everything. Every file you accessed, every client you contacted, every lie you told. And if you push me, I'll make it all public. He turned and left without another word. 20 minutes later, I was called into a meeting with the senior management team. Mark Ellison was there, along with the CEO and the head of HR. They tried to make it seem like I was the problem, like I was causing disruption, undermining the company, acting inappropriately. I let them talk. Then I opened my folder and laid out everything I had. Photos of the documents from Mark's office, logs of his file access, records of client contacts, the memo detailing their plan, testimony from Ray Donner about their attempts to steal clients, letters from Paul Hendricks describing Mark's past behavior. I laid it all out calmly, methodically, like I was presenting a shipping manifest. The room got very quiet. The CEO, a man named Douglas Pritchard, who I'd only met a handful of times, looked at Mark. Is any of this true? Mark started to deny it, but I interrupted. You can verify all of it. Check the file logs. Call the clients. It's all documented. Douglas turned to the HR director. I want a full investigation, starting today. Mark, you're suspended pending the outcome. You can't be serious, Mark said. I'm very serious. If even half of this is true, you've put this company at enormous legal risk, not to mention the ethical violations. He looked at me. Rick, I apologize. If you've been targeted like this, we'll make it right. I don't want an apology, I said. I want him gone, permanently. And I want assurance that this company has no affiliation with Summit Logistics Holdings and never will. You have my word. I walked out of that meeting feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Satisfaction. Mark Ellison was done. His reputation in the industry would be destroyed once word got out. And Zack? He'd just lost his partner, his inside connection, his whole plan. But I wasn't finished yet. Zack called me that night. First time in 3 days. Dad, we need to talk. I don't think we have anything to talk about. Please, just hear me out. I know you're upset, but you don't understand the whole situation. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. Not at his office, not at my house. A public place, a coffee shop downtown. I told Helen where I'd be and when to expect me back. Zack was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of him. He looked tired, older than his 30 years. Thanks for coming, he said as I sat down. I didn't touch the coffee, didn't say anything, just waited. I know what you think, he said. I know how it looks, but it wasn't supposed to be like this. How was it supposed to be? Mark approached me about a year ago. He said he'd been watching you, saw how valuable your client relationships were. He said you were underpaid, underappreciated, that Midwest was taking advantage of you. He had this plan to start a new company, to bring you in as a partner, to let you finally get what you deserved from all those years of work. And you believed him? Yeah, I did, because I thought he was right. I've watched you push yourself to the limit for 35 years. For what? A small pension and a polite farewell? You deserve better than that. So you thought stealing from me was helping me? It wasn't stealing. It was restructuring. We were going to make you a silent partner, let you retire with a real income stream, not just pension pennies. The documents were just to protect the assets during the transition. Zack, those documents would have given you complete control of everything I own. I would have had nothing. That was Mark's idea. He said it had to be structured that way for legal reasons. I didn't understand all the technicalities. Did you even read them? He looked away. Not all of it. So you trusted Mark more than you trusted your own judgment. You let him manipulate you into trying to rob your own father, and you didn't even bother to understand what you were doing. When you put it that way, there's no other way to put it. You tried to erase me, Zack. Take my identity, my work, my reputation, everything. And for what? Money? Status? What was worth doing that to your own father? He was quiet for a long time. Then, quietly, he said, Vanessa. What about her? She's expensive. Her tastes, her expectations. She grew up with money, real money, private schools, country clubs, the whole thing. And she expected me to provide that lifestyle. I've been struggling, Dad. I'm in debt. Credit cards, loans, all of it. And she keeps pushing for more. Bigger house, newer car, luxury vacations. I couldn't keep up. So you decided to steal from me to keep your wife happy. I was desperate. Mark made it sound so easy, so logical. He said everyone does it, moving assets around for tax purposes. He said you'd never even notice, that it would all work out in the end. I felt something shift inside me. Not sympathy. I was too angry for that. But understanding. My son wasn't evil. He was weak and manipulated and desperate, but that didn't excuse what he'd tried to do. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to dissolve Summit Logistics Holdings. Today. File the paperwork, close the bank account, end it completely. Dad, I'm not finished. You're going to contact every client you approached and apologize. Tell them you made a mistake, that you were given bad advice. You're going to make it right. And if I do all that, then I won't press charges. I won't sue you. I won't tell everyone in this industry what you tried to do to me. You'll have a chance to rebuild your reputation, start over clean. What about Mark? Mark's done. He's going to be fired, possibly prosecuted. That's not my problem, and it's not yours. You need to worry about yourself and your own choices. Zack stared at his coffee. I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. I never meant for it to go this far. I know. But that doesn't change what you did. And it doesn't mean things go back to normal between us. I don't trust you anymore, Zack. I don't know if I ever will again. I understand. I stood up to leave. Then I turned back. One more thing. You need to figure out what kind of man you want to be. The kind who takes responsibility for his choices, or the kind who blames everyone else when things go wrong. Because right now, you're the second kind. And that's not the son I raised. I left him sitting there. Drove home feeling empty but not sad. I'd said what needed to be said. Helen was waiting for me. How did it go? He's not evil, just weak. Mark manipulated him, but Zack let himself be manipulated. He made his choices. What happens now? I gave him a chance to make it right. Whether he takes it or not is up to him. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. But Zack didn't make it right. He didn't dissolve Summit Logistics Holdings. He didn't contact the clients to apologize. Instead, he doubled down. Ray called me 3 days later. Rick, you need to know something. Zack's been making moves. What kind of moves? He approached Petrotech again. This time he didn't mention your name. He just offered them a deal they couldn't refuse. 40% below market rates for 6 months, then a modest increase after that. They took it. He can't maintain rates that low. He'll go bankrupt. I know that. You know that. But he's desperate. He signed a contract yesterday. He's committed now. Who's financing this? Mark's suspended. The banks won't loan him money without collateral. That's the interesting part. I did some more digging. Vanessa's father co-signed the loan. He put up his house as collateral. So the desperation went deeper than I thought. Zack had dragged his father-in-law into this mess, risked his family's home to keep the scheme alive. What else? He's been talking to other potential clients, undercutting everyone, promising things he can't deliver. It's going to collapse, Rick. The question is how much damage he does before it falls apart. I thanked Ray and hung up. Helen was watching me. He didn't listen to you. No, he thinks he can still make this work. He thinks if he just gets enough clients, enough revenue, he can prove everyone wrong. Can he? Not a chance. His rates are unsustainable. Even if he gets clients, he'll lose money on every shipment. The math doesn't work. But he's going to take down a lot of people with him when it crashes. Including himself. Yeah, including himself. I thought about walking away. Let Zack make his mistakes. Let him face the consequences on his own. I'd tried to help him, given him a way out. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. But I couldn't do it. Not completely. Because if Zack went down hard, if he ended up in serious financial and legal trouble, it would hurt Helen. It would hurt his father-in-law, who was an innocent bystander. It would hurt everyone, except the people who actually deserved to suffer. So I made a decision. I was going to end this, but I was going to do it in a way that protected the people who didn't deserve to be destroyed. I started making calls. First, I called Petrotech. Asked to speak with their logistics director, a man named Tom Brenner who I'd known for 8 years. Tom, it's Rick Halden. We need to talk about your new contract with Summit Logistics. Rick, I know you're not happy about us switching, but the rates were just too good to pass up. Nothing personal. I understand. But I need to ask you something. Did you check Summit's carrier insurance, their DOT compliance history, their financial backing? Silence. Why would I need to check that? They're a registered company. Being registered doesn't mean they're viable. Tom, Summit has been in business for less than 6 months. They have no track record, no established relationships with carriers, no proven ability to handle volume. And the rates they're offering you? Those rates are below their actual cost. They're going to lose money on every shipment. How do you know that? Because I've been in this business for 35 years. I know what things cost. And I know when something's too good to be true. Summit is going to collapse, probably within 6 months. And when they do, you'll be stuck with interrupted service, lost shipments, breach of contract issues. It's going to cost you more in the long run than you're saving now. I appreciate the concern, Rick, but we signed a contract. We're committed. Most contracts have a clause allowing termination within the first 30 days. Check yours, and then check Summit's financials. Make an informed decision. I'll think about it. That was all I could ask for. I made similar calls to the other potential clients Ray had mentioned. Didn't badmouth Zack directly, didn't make accusations, just asked questions, pointed out facts, let them draw their own conclusions. Within a week, 3 of those potential clients backed out. Petrotech requested financial documentation from Summit that Zack couldn't provide. The walls were closing in. Then Vanessa called me. I hadn't spoken to her since before all this started. Rick, we need to talk. About Zack. I'm listening. He's not himself. He's stressed, anxious, barely sleeping. He's obsessed with this company, with proving everyone wrong. He won't listen to me, won't listen to reason. I'm worried about him. You should be. He's in over his head. I know. And I know I'm part of why. I pushed him to make more money, to give me the lifestyle I wanted. I didn't realize how much pressure I was putting on him. At least she had enough self-awareness to admit that. What do you want from me, Vanessa? Help him. Please. He won't listen to me, but maybe he'll listen to you. Make him see that this isn't going to work, that he needs to walk away before it destroys him. I tried that already. He wouldn't listen. Try again, please. I know I'm asking a lot, after what he tried to do to you, but he's still your son. She was right. No matter what Zack had done, no matter how much he'd hurt me, he was still my son. And if there was any way to pull him back from the edge, I had to try. I'll talk to him, but I can't make any promises. Thank you. I called Zack that evening. Dad? We need to meet. One more time. I don't think that's a good idea. Zack, I'm not asking, I'm telling you. Tomorrow, the same coffee shop. Be there. I hung up before he could argue. Zack was waiting when I arrived at the coffee shop the next afternoon. He looked worse than last time. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, hands shaking slightly as he held his coffee cup. I sat down across from him. You're going to lose everything, I said without preamble. Your company, your money, your reputation, probably your marriage too. And you're going to drag down everyone who trusted you. Your father-in-law is going to lose his house. Your clients are going to lose their shipments. Your employees, if you have any, are going to lose their jobs. This ends badly for everyone, Zack. Everyone except me. What do you want? His voice was hollow. I want you to end this. Today. Dissolve the company, return the contracts, pay back the loans. Take the loss now while you can still recover from it. I can't. If I walk away now, I lose everything anyway. My only chance is to push through, make it work. It's not going to work. The math doesn't work. You're hemorrhaging money on every shipment. Even if you get enough clients to cover volume, you can't maintain these rates. I'll raise the rates after 6 months. And lose all your clients. They're only with you because you're cheap. The moment you raise prices, they'll go back to established companies. Companies with proven track records. Companies they trust. Then what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to stop. Face the consequences. Start over. Easy for you to say. You won. You get to keep everything. I lose everything. You're right. I won. But not because I'm smarter or better than you. I won because I was patient. Because I built relationships over decades instead of trying to take shortcuts. Because I earned trust instead of trying to steal it. I pulled an envelope from my jacket and slid it across the table. What's this? He asked. Open it. Inside was a check, made out to Zack. For $50,000. He stared at it. I don't understand. That's enough to dissolve Summit, pay back the initial loans, keep your father-in-law from losing his house. It doesn't cover everything, but it'll keep you from total ruin. Why would you do this, after everything I did? Because you're still my son, and because Helen asked me to. She doesn't want to see you destroy yourself, even if you tried to destroy me. So I'm giving you one last chance. Take the money, end this, and then figure out who you want to be. Zack's hands were shaking harder now. I couldn't tell if it was from relief or shame or just exhaustion. There's a condition, I added. You sign a legal document stating that you have no claim to any of my assets, now or in the future. You dissolve Summit, and you publicly apologize to everyone you lied to or tried to manipulate, not just the clients, Mark Ellison too. Mark? Why would I apologize to him? Because he's being destroyed right now, and while he deserves it for what he did to me and to Paul Hendricks, you were part of it. You went along with his plan. You need to own that. And if I do all this, then what? We're okay? We're father and son again? No. That's going to take time. Maybe years, maybe never. But you'll have a chance to rebuild your life the right way. That's all I can offer you. He stared at the check for a long time. Then he folded it, put it in his pocket. Okay, I'll do it. Good. My attorney will have the documents ready tomorrow. Sign them, file the dissolution paperwork, and make the apologies. I'll be watching to make sure you follow through. I stood up to leave. Dad? Zack's voice was quiet. I really am sorry. For all of it. I know. But sorry doesn't fix what you broke. Only time and action can do that. I walked out of the coffee shop and got in my truck, drove straight to Ray Donner's office. "It's done," I told him. "He's ending it?" "Yeah, I made sure of it." "You gave him money, didn't you?" "Some." Ray shook his head. "You're a better man than I would be. If my kid tried to rob me, I'd let him drown." "Maybe. But Helen wouldn't have forgiven me, and I wouldn't have forgiven myself." 2 weeks later, Summit Logistics Holdings filed for dissolution. Zack sent letters to every client he'd contacted, apologizing for misrepresentation and breach of trust. He even sent a letter to Mark Ellison, though I doubted Mark cared at that point. He'd been fired from Midwest and was facing potential prosecution for fraud. Petratech came back to Midwest Logistics, sheepish, but willing to continue the relationship. Most of the other clients never left in the first place. My life went back to normal.